Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach, and today we have with us Dominick Cappuccilli, who is the CEO of The Clean Sell. Welcome to the program, Dominick.
Mike, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. Excited to chat.
Yeah. So I assume by the name of the company, Clean Sell, that we are everything and all things selling. So I like the focus there. So, but give us a little bit of background on yourself, and then what led you to start your consulting firm.
Yeah, sure. So I started out originally not as a salesperson. I was a writer. I was a journalist out of college, and then I became a screenwriter. And I kind of learned about how to structure stories throughout doing that, and it was something that I really enjoyed, but I also really enjoyed the business world. So I ended up starting a career in sales, and I realized, thinking I would have to start all over, that my background wasn't going to prepare me well. And what I realized is that actually was becoming a storyteller was the best possible preparation I could have had for a career in sales. And, I worked with a healthcare company, and I was able to, for a friend, I rewrote their sales story for them. We were able to double their sales in 6 months, doing that, which was really exciting. And I said, oh, wow, there might be something
to this.
Yeah. So I continued to kind of advance in my sales career, went on to, ZocDoc, worked there for a while. And then I kind of got into the startup and the small business world, and got to build a sales operation, really a product from the ground up for an existing company who was launching into a new product line. It was a healthcare company. And when I was there, I started to get to talk to some of these amazing small business owners and entrepreneurs. And I realized that, many of them, almost all of them, were succeeding in spite of their sales operation, not because of it, and for me, they all had these great networks. They were these extremely charismatic people, and I couldn't believe it. I thought that, they must have like an entire sales organization built. They must have a really sound sales pitch, and a lot of them didn't. And I spent some time with them, and I would have like just kind of a couple of lunches or meetings or just kind of off the cuff things. And I started realizing what I really knew is I was talking to a friend of mine, and we had an hour meeting, and she closed a $100,000 deal a couple of weeks later because of that meeting. And it was pretty simple advice I gave her, which is she had a client that was a huge Fortune 500 company, and she was working with one division of that company, and she didn't ask for any introductions. She had never thought or didn't know how or wasn't aware of asking for introductions to other divisions.
You already have your foot in the door.
Company. Yeah, exactly. So, I saw that, and I said, wow, I think I enjoy the teaching part of it. I really enjoy kind of getting in there and learning about new businesses, and I realized there might be something there. So, when I decided to go off on my own, I took on the old company that I built, that new wing for as my first client. We were kind of off to the races from there, and I've been working with, recently funded companies, large companies that have been stagnant, large companies who are trying to tell a better sales story, just kind of all over the map, trying to put my unique viewpoint and help them tell a better sales story and put together a better sales process and sales organization that's in line with best practices.
And so I'm certain that entails cleaning up the current processes, but then also scaling up. And from your introduction, there is the main focus of your coaching and working with clients, kind of getting their pitch into that story selling concept.
Yeah, if you don't do that right, I don't care if you're trying to sell your wife or husband on taking out the trash, or you're trying to sell a multinational deal. If you can't figure out your sales story and you don't understand how people are persuaded, nothing else matters.
Yeah.
You're going to, the people you're going to close, you were going to close anyway because they needed it, and they just kind of saw you as the best option, and they really made that decision. The people you weren't going to close, you definitely won't close anyway. But those people in the middle who could have been persuaded one way or the other, you're going to lose them. And it's those people, it's that 60% that really matter. So I think that core piece of really understanding how a person is persuaded, and not in like a manipulative way, but understanding like what, how you can get across and get somebody to go through like the journey it takes to figure out if your solution is right for them, and the approach there. I think there's a ton of misunderstanding about that. And just even going through the exercises that we go through to get to that piece with our clients before we ever give them any kind of deliverable is extremely valuable for them. It just gives them a new paradigm on sales in general.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. In fact, I just recently interviewed Martin Lewis with Buying Journey DNA, and he talks about the buyer's journey and, more importantly, why people don't buy. And it's so interesting because I think a lot of you mentioned something just kind of off the cuff a second ago, which is powerful. A lot of people are succeeding in spite of themselves because they're just going 1,000 miles an hour, and they're seeing some success, and they don't really know the true reasons why. You ask a top performing salesperson, what do you do to make yourself great? And he's like, I don't know. I just go out and talk and sell and do. But if someone actually analyzed it, it's like, well, you do this well, and then you bring this in, but learning how to tell that story, and it's not a once upon a time kind of a thing. It's facts tell, but story sell. So where do you start with someone when you're trying to get them to turn their attention to storifying their pitch?
Storifying. I'm going to steal that. I like
okay,
that.
Go. You can have it.
But no, I just to touch on what you said, I think that what you're talking about is very often a lot of people who are naturals, and a lot of entrepreneurs are very charismatic people. You wouldn't start a business if you didn't. And some of them are great charismatic, and they're charismatic sellers, and they can actually sell. They have no idea how they're doing it. Absolutely none. And one of the things that I say to my clients is that charisma doesn't scale.
Yeah.
You can't unless you really understand what goes behind that and why you're good at selling. A lot of this is just kind of emotional intelligence, pattern recognition from people. It's like, oh, I said this and that person reacted poorly. I said that and this person reacted well. And if you're paying attention well enough, you can start to pick those things up, and you kind of just get this natural, innate thing that sticks with you. And that's great. That's an amazing talent. But you need to know what actually goes into creating a successful pitch and a successful sales story, and what somebody needs to go through. And that's where that's where the screenwriting piece came in huge, because if you watch, I hate to ruin movies for you, but if you watch any movie, I would say 95% of movies have the exact same structure to them. Yeah. Right? Here's the setup. Here's what's going on in the world. Here's what the stakes are. We're going to and everything goes in the movie really one way for about the first hour, and then it starts going the other way for the next hour.
And then in the last 8 minutes, it comes together.
Exactly. So it's like, hey, here's what the world is. Here's what the stakes are if our hero doesn't succeed. And here's a little bit of glimmer of hope or despair that's going to either get in the way of my hero's path that he was succeeding on, or help bring him back when he was going down. And then the last part is the hero saves the day. That's it. Yeah. Those are, if you look at every single movie, the vast majority of them follow that structure. And sales pitches can follow that structure too. So I always use the mostly because I don't want to do spoilers, and I feel like everybody's seen Star Wars, but I always use Star Wars as my sales analogy. I'd say Luke blows up the Death Star in the last 5 minutes of the movie. Every one of my clients make the mistake of having in their sales pitches of not doing the entire rest of the movie before. They want Luke to blow up the Death Star in the first 5 minutes of their movie, and they need to go way further back, because if I turn on Star Wars right now and I watch that scene, I don't care. If I turned on Star Wars and I watched the entire 2-hour movie, I might be crying when that happens.
Because what's the significance of that? Why was that impactful? What did it matter? Yeah.
Yeah, I went through the emotional journey that gets me there. So I think the important part is deconstructing that journey.
Well, I think the other
really
piece to that Star Wars example is you as the brand needs to be Yoda, not, Luke Skywalker. You need to be the one kind of telling them about each step along the way so that they feel like they are the one blowing up the Death Star and you're just the one behind the scenes guiding them.
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason you watch that movie is because you put yourself in as Yoda, and you make an important point. I've never really thought about it that way with regard to this example. But people don't care about your story; they care about their own.
Yeah.
And like the reason I watch Star Wars is because I place myself as the hero. The reason I watch any movie is because I am putting myself in the shoes of the hero. It makes it's like intentional empathy that people are doing, and you need to do that in a sales pitch too.
You need to make sure that's because, the old, I learned this from Brian Tracy, but the old speaker, comical comment to say is, what's everyone's favorite radio station? And people are like, oh, it's W, blah, blah. And no, it's WIIFM. What's in it for me? And if we can broadcast and advertise on that quote unquote station, where people that are in our target audience are realizing what is in it for me, and they're the hero. Now, all of a sudden, you're getting their attention. And too many times we look at someone's sales pitch, website, sales collateral, and it's all I, we, me. But it ought to be like you will get and you will notice and you will experience. And I think that's a big shift people don't pick up on.
Yeah, it's a really tough one. It's actually, if I can break it down into one sentence of what I work with my clients on, I get them to stop talking about themselves and their solution and start talking about their prospects and their problems. And that is the key thing that you need to do. You need to be talking about the prospect, their problems, what their pain points are, what they're running into. And if you're not doing that, they're going to find somebody else who is. A really good sales coach of mine, she's a great old lady. She's like 75 years old. She's been doing sales consulting for a long time, and she's just this like sweet lady who's like an absolute killer as a salesperson, really understands how it works. And she said to me once something that I thought was very important. She said, people don't buy from you because they believe your solution is the best. People buy from you because they believe that you understand their problems. Yeah. That's a very interesting piece. If you can show people that you understand their problems and that the solution is kind of an afterthought. You've gained that credibility, and so many people spend 90% of a pitch talking about the solution, and you should be spending, we have like 7 or 8 structure pieces within a pitch that when we work with our clients, depending on the business, and 6 of them have nothing to do with our product. Yep. You're
it's like that Maya Angelou quote that, or the old quote, I forget even who it's attributed to, but people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, because at that point now the know, like, and trust factor, your friends, they're going to trust and listen a little bit more to you than before when you come in and say, boom, here's this solution. So they haven't even really formulated the full impact of their problem yet. And I think that needs to be articulated at some point in that pitch, right?
Yeah, you haven't earned the right to tell them about your solution until you've talked about their problems. You don't ask for a date, you don't ask for a marriage ring before you you don't ask somebody to marry you before you talk to them at a bar. Yep. It's a very important thing, and people need to feel that trust. And sometimes that trust happens over several meetings. Sometimes it happens within one meeting. But it's really important. The most important thing that you can possibly do is tell a client, or is make sure that you really do understand a client's pain points, and repeat that to them. This is kind of like, I'm not a sales gimmick person. I really like, I don't get too slogany myself, and I don't like these truisms about sales. But one gimmick that works really well is all you have to do when somebody tells you a problem or a pain point that they have is repeat it back to them or paraphrase it and show them that you understand. So what are you, all you have to say is, okay, someone says, hey, I'm having a tough time, I don't know, with my CRM. You can literally say back to them, so what you're telling me is you're having a tough time with your CRM, and be like, this guy gets me. Hopefully you add a little bit more value than that when you're talking to them. But a lot of what you're doing as a salesperson is you become an interviewer, and you become someone who needs to question and get them to understand and clarify And a lot of people are too scared to ask the follow-up question because they don't want to look like they don't know that business. And people are very impressed by that when you're willing to really kind of dig in and slow down and ask them to clarify.
Well, the interesting thing too, when you mentioned about the CRM, and I know that was just off the cuff, but just as an example, if you do not ask enough good questions, you don't know where they're headed because you might assume it right off the bat. Oh, yeah, you need a cheap CRM. Well, I've got the solution for this low price. And they might be going, you know what? Our CRM doesn't do enough, and we want to pay as much money as we can to have as many buying triggers and bells and whistles, and you just shot yourself in the foot because you assumed one way than the other.
Talk yourself right out of a sale. I mean,
yeah.
I used to always, when I was working with people at ZocDoc, because I would sometimes work with the younger reps, I said the first thing you need to ask when somebody gets on the phone is how did you or what do you know about us coming into today? That's the first question I always ask within a sales thing. The reason I ask it is because I didn't a few times, and I talked myself out of sales. And then I remember one time I did ask it, first time I did, and the person said, I talked to someone in customer service, and they said I got to talk to someone in sales. I was just trying to sign up. And I just said, oh, okay, great. Well. And next thing you know, we got to the credit card, and I had them on, and it was done. And it's like these questions are super important. You have to become a really good questioner, and more than a good questioner, a good listener. Right? How can you need to follow up and let people dig in with your question, with the way when you ask questions. It's super important. You can't just ask a bunch of rattled off 20 questions thing. It needs to be a conversation that dives into the needs that they have.
Well, and then, we can go on forever and ever, but, when you do find out that issue, that concern, find out how really impactful it is to them. And you're like, well, what happens if you don't fix this? Well, good gracious, our company could go under. And, you see that really, do you watch Marcus Lemonis' show, The Profit?
I have not seen it, actually. It's one of those ones where
well, you need to binge watch it.
Watch it, but I had,
it's a master class.
I used to work in, he takes over businesses or restaurants only. Is it?
No. Yeah, he does any kind of business. You're thinking of bar rescue or whatever. That's where he just only does restaurants. But The Prophet comes into any kind of business out there. But he has said in almost every episode, but in so many of them, he will just dig deep and go, "What happens if you don't fix this?" And he literally gets people crying or emotional because it's like, we'll go under, and this is our legacy, and my father started this company, and that's we don't want to actually go to that point with our prospects, but you do want to get a little bit in there where it's like, what really is driving them on that point?
No, 100%, right? You can't just, that's the importance of the follow-up and this is classic spin selling by Neil Rackham, right? Where you're asking situation questions first, then you're asking problem questions, then you're asking implication questions, meaning what's going to happen if I don't fix this?
And you don't be mean about it.
Question. No, you're being realistic. Right. I have no problem with, I think sometimes, especially if you're selling a disruptive product, you have to have this down. You really do, because if you're selling towels or a commodity or something, some other commodity, it doesn't really matter. It's what the relationship looks like. It's how well you manage the sales process. But when you're selling a disruptive product that is not something that's an absolute necessity for them to run their business, you need that piece. You need them to understand what are the costs if they don't fix this problem that you fix, and you need to dig in, and you need to make them feel that pain. The way I talk about it is, it's like a dentist. It's like if you went to the dentist today, and I said, "Hey, how was the dentist?" You go, "It wasn't that good." You're gonna be like, "Oh, yeah, did they drill you? Did it make that weird sound? What was that like? Could you feel the grinding?" You know what I mean? You need to ask them and really dig into that, and they're gonna be by the end of that conversation, they're gonna be twitching. Remembering how not fun that was. So you need to make someone feel those emotions within a sales pitch. It's an important piece, and especially, I don't think you want to be manipulative there, but I think it's very important to make sure that they do feel those.
Exactly. Well, listen, I think we could probably go on for about another 4.5 hours, but we probably should wrap it up and say, what's the best way that someone can reach out to you if what we're talking about resonates with them, like I need this in my organization or my sales team, what's the best way that they can reach out and learn a little bit more about storifying their pitch?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can reach out to me directly via email at dom, D-O-M, at thecleansell, SELL.com. Or you can go to my website and just shoot me a note on there, The Clean Cell, www.thecleansell.com.
Perfect. Well, Dom, thank you so much for your time. It was great talking and getting to know you today.
You too. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.